Good evening and welcome to Sim Racing Online. You join us here at Longford in Australia. This is the venue of our Round 2 Formula 1 1967 Championship. It should be an epic time. It should be a really good circuit for all these cars. Kind of in period. I don't think Formula 1 ever actually came here officially, but it's going to be an interesting challenge for our drivers. So, welcome to everyone. I am your host, Neil Wood, and I will be taking you through 60 minutes of a race here. We're not expecting any different weather conditions, so it's going to be dry throughout. But that's not going to be the challenge. The challenge is just going to getting to the end. This circuit does have some challenges along the way, but we'll get to that in a second. So what our drivers have got in store is 60 minutes around this circuit, but we're going to be using the 1967 cars. Now, there was one car added to this bunch, which I didn't get time to add because it was patched not long ago. We now have a McLaren added alongside our Brabham, BRM, Cooper, Ferrari, Honda and Lotus, and there should be an Eagle in there as well, an Eagle Westlake. So I'll add those for the next round. But those cars are what our drivers have got to contend with, and they've got to change cars every single round. So we've got a 6-round championship to contend with today, or in every week or every Wednesday. So our first round was actually at Mount Panorama, the 1967 version. So along the Conrod Straight they went, and they didn't stop until they got to the last corner. So that was quite an eventful race, and I'll get to that later in the broadcast. But Longford today on the 29th of April. But we're going to be heading to France for round 3 for Clermont-Ferrand. That's the 1965 layout, so that's the extended layout. And then we've had a slight change for round 4, which will be Fuji 1968. So these 1967 cars are going to be heading around the banking for turn 1, which should be a marvellous sight. And then we head to an in-period track in Canada called Mosport Park, sometimes referred to as Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. I think that's its full name now. And then for our last round on the 27th of May, we'll be at Watkins Glen 1965. So, good in-period tracks to choose from. But this is the way our championship stacks up after our first round. It was a very eventful first round at Bathurst, but Maddie Shepherd leads the championship with 9 points for our first place. Costas Kanzouris in second with 6 points. Lars Hagman in third with 4. Jim Cavallo in fourth with 3. Michael Masaryk in fifth with 2. And Bjorn Hagman, the last of the point scorers, only down to 6 places. We're having scoring, so 1 point for Bjorn Hagman, and the rest that finished did not score. So points are hard to come by in this series rather. So drivers have got to be very wary of how far up they can get on the grid. But as I say, the extra challenge is that drivers have got to try and pick the best car to suit the track, and in this case Longford today. So our drivers are out on track on this 7.24 kilometre track, or I could call it a street course, but it's heading out into the countryside for the majority of it. 4.5 miles, based in Australia, in Tasmania exactly. Opened in 1953 and closed in 1968, so a year after we are racing it today. But it should be a fun time. So let's head over to the practice and see what our drivers are doing. So drivers are out on track for practice. A couple of drivers going side by side down what is going to be a very contentious a couple of straights on this track where drivers can get a good run, beating the slipstream of other drivers. So this is one of them. So we've got 2 cars heading down to what is the last corner. So out of the last corner we come, and we're going to stay with Maddie Shepherd. Maddie Shepherd's in the Eagle today. I believe she was in the Cooper last time out. I have my cheat sheet available so I can check who was in what car. Let's make this a bit bigger so I can see what I'm doing. So, Michael Mazurek, as I say, he did score points last time out. It was a bit of an up or down run for Michael Mazurek, who's decided to take the Ferrari today. Michael Mazurek was in the Cooper last time out. Phil Brown, unfortunately, was the first of our retirements last week, and came a bit of a cropper on one of the Yarnco barriers and ended up suspended, unable to get going again, so came back 10th in the end. So Mandy Shepherd was another one of our Cooper drivers, but as I say, he's decided to take the Eagle Westlake today. So down to one sharp banked corner. That bump on the inside can be very lethal. It's got a slight banking to that corner as they come across the King's Bridge. No, that's not the King's Bridge, that's the Long Bridge to Newry Corner. Slightly wide on the exit. And down the Flying Mile we go. So this is one of our straights. So slipstream opportunities for all of our drivers. I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of battles we've got. We want a drafting partner if possible. So braking hard all the way down to what is the final turn, Mountford Corner. Got to be very careful because there's a slight ditch on the outside. If you do get it wrong, you do get your braking wrong, there is a bit of a runoff at the end. So Michael Mazurek braking a little late there. So there are a couple of ditches around the track that could catch our drivers out. There's also a couple of places that give our drivers a little bit of a hand if they get the braking wrong. So coming into the last corner, if they go straight on, they can spin turn and rejoin the track. And that is also the case for, I think, one at the end of the other straights on the track. There's someone off at the end of the straight. Costas Kanzouris is one of our drivers, and I think one of our only drivers that has decided to take the McLaren today. So the newest car in this car set, the Bruce McLaren 1967 car. A lovely sounding car as well. So it's about a 2-minute lap. We're just under 2 minutes, 1:59.1 Mazurek has put in for provisional practice. We will be going for our qualifying session in about 5 minutes time, where our drivers have about 10 minutes to put in a lap, so they should get at most about 5 laps in. So other drivers in our field. So we had Maddie Shepherd, championship leader. A stunning first round in that Cooper. There was a battle at the top between all of the Cooper drivers. But now those Cooper drivers have now had to change to different cars. Mazurek was one of those, but now changed it for the lovely power of the Scuderia Ferrari. Let's try and knock it down the field. I am using automatic cameras today, so I can pick and choose what I want to look at, but the game is going to pick and choose for me at regular intervals. So Tony Talviti in the Eagle Westlake. Tony Talviti took the... In fact, this is actually Tony's first time with the championship, so I'm going to have to add him to the list. So Lars Hagman in the Honda. The Honda RA 300. So it's lovely when he's knocking it down the gears at the end of that straight. Slightly wide, and you go across this bridge section, which gets slightly tighter. So you've got these long straight sections, and you've got these fiddly little bits where the track does narrow in places across bridges, and slightly narrower and trickier, I would say, for a lot of these drivers. So it's going to be very difficult in racing terms. I mean, when they go out for their qualifying laps, they've got to find some space. So through this bridge section, Tony Talviti comes. Now, according to my list, as I said, Tony Talviti has not taken a car this time. This is his first round. So we can mark him down on the list, mark him off. He's taken the Eagle for this round. So there are 8 cars to choose from. And that's 6 rounds, so there's opportunity for maybe a couple of cars that generally drivers do not want to take. But we'll have to see whether what are the least popular choices. So coming out the last corner. Now this track is worth looking up on YouTube. I recently looked up, I think it was the 1964 race that they had here. So they had a couple of Formula 1 stars. I don't think it was an official round of the Formula 1 Championship, but it had a few of the people that would have competed in Formula 1. The likes of Graham Hill and others. So Lars Hagman, another one of our Cooper drivers, have now switched to the Honda this time. So we've got 11 drivers this time. We always hope for a little bit more. Historic racing is always fun to watch, always fun to commentate on. So that slight bend to the left. Coming down the Flying Mile. So it's got some slight crests in the road. The road is probably got a slight crest in the middle of it as well. Driver's going to have to definitely think about what side of the road that they want to be on down to the final corner. Mountford corner. Now also on track, in a bit, Romain Labro had a great battle with, I believe, it was Bjorn Hagman for a little bit, swapping places. We also have a newcomer on track as well. Cal Stanley is joining us today. So Cal Stanley wasn't here for our first round. So Philip Pichler in the Brabham this time. Philip Pichler, looking down my list. Philip Pichler doesn't seem to have a car on my list for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why. Let's look at my championship table. Maybe I'm getting the Phillips mixed up, because I don't think Philip was here last time either. So we're just about to go over to qualifying now. 10 minutes or so for our drivers to find some space and find a lap time. It was indeed Phil Brown that joined us last time. It wasn't Philip Pischler, so I knew I'd get the Phillips mixed up. Right, so out we come for qualifying. Just 10 minutes. It's quite difficult to get out of the gate onto the what is a unobstructed pit lane. We're not really expecting any pit stops in the race either, so drivers got to be very, very wary of how they are coming into the pits. So looks like Talviti is the first out on track. Now you've got this really hard section at the first part of the lap, coming through what is called the viaduct. Now I did talk about pinch points, and that is going to be one of them. So through the viaduct they go, over King's Bridge, and up to Longford Corner. Oh, someone gets it. All kinds of squirrely on the grass there. So this is the first of the long straights over the level crossing. So this is referred to as Tannery Straight. So it heads up towards what I think is one of the harder corners. It's I mean, I wouldn't even call it a straight really. It's got a slight bend in it. But you head up to Tannery Corner, and it's hard to pick a braking point, but if you do get it wrong, you actually end up in an open field because the gate is open. So across the long bridge and up to Newry Corner, and then down the Flying Mile. I'll be intrigued to see what kind of lap times people are putting in. We've now got 13 drivers on track. That's good to see. So down the Flying Mile. Be good to have a drafting partner. So, as we said, Tony Talviti is the first out on track. Locking up slightly, it's having to brake and turn at the same time. And through that first section, but you can see it a little bit wide, just missing that tree stump on the inside. Over the bridge it goes. Down towards Longford Corner, so using all of the track. So absolutely ragging that thing. That eagle up onto the straight. So up towards Tannery Corner. So the first sector, 34.1. Fastest of all currently. Not a lot of people on a lap at the moment. But it is the fastest sector of all currently. And very tricky narrowing through the bridge section, and there was a slightly banked corner, but there are ditches on either side. Down the next long straight. It looked like there's a car stopped. I think Philip Pischler stopped out on track. I want to concentrate on Talviti putting in his first lap time. So next sector, 42.4. Again, the fastest of all. Braking really, really hard. You don't really want to screw it up right at the end, and you've got to be very wary of those tyres on the inside. Philip Pischler is still stuck there. He's actually underwater. He doesn't want to ruin this lap, so Philip is trying to make his way back to the track. I've never ever seen someone that far off track, so that's an interesting one. So helicopter cam looking at Phil Brown. So as I say, Phil Brown unfortunately didn't have much luck at Bathurst. struggling to hold on to that Eagle through the tight bridge section. So Phil Brown was in the Lotus last time out, so swapping what is supposedly the fastest car on the track for the next fastest car on the track. So 1:59.1, pretty much exactly what the top time from practice was. So that's the time to beat. Masaryk pops into second, 0.5 of a second behind. Julian Paws, it's the battle of Ferraris behind, bouncing off that fence. Thankfully it is solid, so that looks very uncomfortable to drive. So Julian Paws in third. Maddie Shepherd has popped up to fourth. So it was going to be the battle of the Ferraris from second down to fifth, but Maddie Shepherd has popped her Eagle in fourth place. Romain Labero currently in fifth place. So as with Bathurst, it was a case of just got to stick with some of the drivers and wait until the big long straight. There are two, of which there are two here. We've got third place off the track as well. I wonder what's happened to Julian. So Julian has, unfortunately, I think you're stuck, Julian. You're in a tree, so that's the end of Julian's qualification. He is in third, but that is under threat as people are improving. So Maddie Shepherd was behind a Ferrari. I'm not. In fact, no, I think that was a Honda. She was coming up behind. So Taubiti again putting in a 34.0. So fastest of all in the first sector. And thankfully Julian Paws is off the track. I think we've got another victim perhaps. No, it stays green down there, but sector 1 is a yellow flag because of Julian's embedded. In fact, I think that's somebody else. They've got going again, so that seems to be a little bit of a pinch point. Turns 1 and 2. Going through to the viaduct, so drivers have got to be very careful. Maddie Shepherd pops up to second place. Is that 7/100ths of a second? So minuscule, but it looks like, I think Taubiti is possibly going to beat it. He's about 0.7 of a second better in the second sector, so this is possibly down into the. It could be down into the 57s, but maybe staying in the 58s. So slightly wide coming through the final corner. And across the line we go. Going to be at 158.9. So 158.4, not as much as I thought it was, but moves provisional pole a bit further away. We've only got just under 2 minutes to go. So Taubiti leads, Shepherd second, Masaryk is in third, Brown in fourth, Paws in fifth. Can't improve because of unfortunately going off into the scenery, but all the rest of the drivers could possibly improve. We have the Hagman brothers in 7th and 8th, both in the Hondas. And then John Van der Geest in 9th, Cal Stanley in 10th. Costas Kansas, I don't think has set a representative time. Neither has Cal Stanley. They're in 7 seconds off the pace. I think they can improve from there. So it looks like Pichler is going to have to come from the back. So Shepherd possibly gets one more lap after this, coming down to what is the final corner. It's a lovely sounding Westlake engine. And you see the front straight there. The front straight's looking a bit tight. Barely enough room for 2 wide. It looks like Tony Taubiti is coming to a stop. He's decided that that's enough for him. So Masaryk is the car that's missing the front of that Ferrari. So is Shepherd going for another lap? She is not. So Shepherd does go provisional pole. I didn't spot that on my sheet there. Provisional pole by 0.2 of a second. I'm not sure anyone's really got the pace to unsettle her. Now we've got a number of cars that are coming through the same part of the track. One of which is, well, I had to switch to Michael Masaryk as unfortunately he's had a little bit of a spin. Phil Brown now popped up to third. Can he improve up to the front row? So LeBeau goes up to third place, 0.7 away from pole, knocking Phil Brown down to fourth. So Phil Brown going to come across the line. So 11th and 10th have crossed the line. I don't think there's any improvement by 11th and 10th. Any improvement by Phil Brown? No, he stays fourth. The last car out on track is Costa Scanzurus, the only McLaren in the field. Comes out the final corner. Needs to improve on 9th place. That's the line he goes. Up to 8th. So that is our grid set for this event. Right, let's check the official qualification results. So your starting order is as follows. Maddie Shepherd is on pole. On the front row with her is Tony Talviti in second. Romain LeBeau, stunning qualification for him. In third, with Phil Brown in fourth. Masaryk in fifth. Julian Boers unfortunately out from qualifying early in sixth. Lars Hagman in seventh, with Costa Scanzurus in the McLaren in eighth. Bjorn Hagman in the Honda in ninth. John van der Geest in the Eagle in 10th. Cal Stanley in 11th in the other Eagle. And our last of our qualification or our qualifiers is Philip Pichler, who didn't get a representative time in 12th. So, very interesting qualification session for our drivers. They're out for warm-up. So drivers will want to be doing their practice starts, finding their clutch bite points. So you see the road has a little bit of a crest in the centre. And we're coming down to this really tight section over the crest, so braking and turning at the same time. Got to get it slowed down. Not do that because that's easily done. Didn't hit anything solid, but that's very easily done. Good recovery. So a little bit about the circuit we're looking at today. So Longford, based in Tasmania in Australia. Opened in 1953, closed in 1968. The events that it used to hold, the Australian Drivers' Championship. We did have apparently an Australian Grand Prix in 59 and 65. And then we have the Australian Tourist Trophy. I'm seeing a pattern here. And then the Australian Touring Car Championship in 1962. So I wonder what kind of touring cars we had back then. And then last we have the Tasman series, which is possibly the series that I saw a video of. That was 1964 to 1968. So, two people missing their braking points there. Quick spin turn, and you should be back onto the course again. So 7.24 kilometers, 4.5 miles, 9 turns. Apparently, the race lap record was 2 minutes and 12 seconds, 0.6. So we are slightly underneath that. That was in a Ferrari sports prototype in 1968. So we are possibly running more high-powered cars on this circuit than they did do back then. So that's the other runoff that you get at the end of the long straight. So you do get the opportunity to spin turn, if you don't spin turn into the barriers, of course. The only thing hurt is your ego. So drivers that have raced around here that you may know about: Jack Brabham, Jim Clark, Graham Hill, Phil Hill, Denny Hill, Jackie Stewart, as well as Bruce McLaren, of course, and Chris Amon. Quite a number of famous drivers. So looking at lap records, we have sports prototypes, Formula 2, Formula 1, Formula Libre, and Group 1. But a great track made by a track creator called Wuchu, and it was a kind of a out of the blue, really. It wasn't a track that I think it was on anybody's radar, and it does provide some very good historic racing. I've seen some sports car racing around here, and now we have Formula 1 from the 1960s, so should provide some good racing. So things to watch out for in this race are the short run down to turn 1. Drivers have got to be very careful because the track does narrow quite a bit. And then we head to the narrow section across the bridge and to the first big stopping point on the circuit, and then they go up the straight for the first time. So hopefully everyone gets through that section okay. We won't have any yellow flags or possibly people down in the water or down in the ditch. So I think perhaps people might want to just survive for that part of the course, and then open up the engines all the way down that first straight, the Tannery Straight, towards Tannery Corner. So drivers just receiving their last briefing from the admin, and we will be going green shortly. So a narrow grid as well. A narrow grid for them to start. And we will be going green. There's no formation lap, so we'll be going green straight away. So clutch bike points 43 degrees, track temperature 27.9 degrees, air temperature, so quite warm. So everyone lined up and ready to go. So quick getaway. Got a driver from the look like the third row coming through, making a very quick start. I don't know if he'll get penalised for jumping into the pit lane, but that was Romain Lebreau in the blue cars. He's gone up to second place. So we want clean driving through this first section. Don't want to see any yellow flags, as everyone survived. I hope their hands up, but Paddy Shepherd from pole is away, dipping slightly onto the grass. You can see a couple of drivers that are side by side behind, and looks like we have no yellow flags. That's good to see. So up the straight for the first time. This is the first opportunity for our drivers to get into the draft. Side by side, Julian Pause and Romain Lebreau through this slight kink up to Tannery Corner. But Romain Lebreau stays in second place, so it's an eagle in first. Ferrari, and then the Honda of Costas Canzuras behind. Right, so through Newry Corner, slight right-hander and into a slight left, and then down the big long straight with a flying mile. So this is the second straight. So everyone clean through. There is a straggler out the back. Looks like 13th place Gilles de Silva may have had some problems. And in fact, he's had more problems. That's a yellow in sector 2. So 2 Ferraris side by side into the braking zone. Can near enough get 2 through there, but Lebreau does stay in second, but only just. But Julian Pause was able to get a bit more momentum up the first straight. So down into the viaduct section, this will be very hard to pass. Don't want to clip that curb, don't want to clip the bridge either. Seeing dust up ahead, but it doesn't look like any problems. So across the bridge, down to Longford Corner they go. So slight late lunge for Romain Lebreau. I don't think Julian Pause was actually expecting that. I don't know if Lebreau was actually expecting it either. So in the slipstream we go, all the way down the Tannery Straight, up towards Tannery Corner. So as I say, it's hard to pick your braking point. Julian Pause goes defensive. It looks like behind, Phil Brown has now popped up to 4th place. So Julian Pause using that banking to good effect. It's now Ferrari 2nd, 3rd and 4th. Costas Canzuras being the victim of the drafting down the straight, it looks like, but top 6 all together. Gilles de Silva has been the first of our retirement, so I'm not sure what happened at the end of Newry Corner. We also have Philip Pichler out the back in 12th, but drafting all the way down the straight. Their drivers from 2nd all the way down to about 8th. Side by side behind. So this is Costas Canzuras going down another place. So that McLaren has possibly not got the grunt on the straights. Fastest lap time of Matty Shepherd out front. 2:01.4. So brave driving between these two here. Costas Canzuras now down to 7th place. Mazarek has now popped up a place into 6th. Some dust ahead. Yeah, it's always worrying coming through a tight section and you see a cloud of dust. You're wondering if there's going to be a car inside that cloud of dust. So unfortunately Costas Canzuras is dropping like a stone at the moment. And behind Costas Canzuras we have the 2 Hondas of the Hagman brothers. Dropped slightly away, so 8th, and Bjorn Hagman in 9th, dropping slightly away from the field. There's a real battle behind though. John van der Geest in the Eagle chasing Cal Stanley. So John van der Geest was shaping up for a look down into what I believe is Tannery Corner. And we go through the narrow bridge section. So still side by side, most of these cars heading onto the straight. Tony Talviti now in 5th place, working his way up the field. So remember, Tony Tavidi was actually on the front row. So he must have had a really bad getaway. It's possibly going to pulling out from the slipstream and getting Phil Brown on the brakes. Doesn't feel like he's got enough. Slightly wide from the car behind. But whilst this is all going on, Matty Shepherd has pulled out a lead in front, 3.5 seconds. Michael Masaryk, after Tony Taviti shaped up for a look, is now right on the tail of Tony. Tony brakes slightly late. That's always a bit sketchy. I didn't think he was actually going to get it stopped, but he did. That was a little bit scary. So down to Longford corner again. And down the straight we go. All these cars in a line. So we have, I think it's 6th, 7th, 8th. In fact, 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th all in a row there. So Ferrari, Honda, McLaren, Honda. So Kostas Kantzeris trying to make his way back through those places he lost early on. 7th place. He's just outside the points, so remember the points only go down to 6th place. It's always a bit annoying when you're like one place outside the points. So Kantzeris had a second last time out at Bathurst in round 1. So maybe was hoping for a little more. We have a yellow out in sector 2. Looks like Philip Pichler at the back in 11th. Has had a problem at the end of the straight, but gets going again. So touching the dirt on the outside, it's not always a good thing to do. And you're braking hard down into this, what is a right angle turn right at the end of the straight, or more than a right angle. So down to the viaduct. Lars Hagman chasing that McLaren. Well, in fact, he's in front of the McLaren. He's chasing a Ferrari. So the Ferrari of... Well, in fact, Kantzeris is actually in a Honda sandwich there. You can see the Honda in front of him. Slightly out of shape from Masaryk behind, I think. Got a little bit of a swapper onto the straight, which is not going to give him good momentum. Which means that Hagman's going to be directly in his slipstream. Up the Tannery straight they go. There's a slight bend in the track coming up to Tannery corner. Unfortunately, he gets the braking a little bit wrong. There is some banking in that corner to help you round. So Masaryk, slight bounce off the barrier. That means that Kantzeris is going to be right on his tail. And so can Hagman now get away? He's now at 5th place from where he was. There's a little bit of a gap to 4th place. Oh, Phil Brown. So goes early to defend down the last straight flying mile. So side by side, trying to recoup that lost time. Possibly can get this Honda on the brakes if he can just get it stopped, and he does. Can he get it turned in? He does. So turnabout's fair play. It does look like Tony Taviti has... I did wonder why we weren't seeing that eagle. He has been our second retirement. So I wonder what happened to Tony whilst we were watching this battle for 5th and 6th. That's unfortunate. That was his first round in this series. So Lars Hagman chasing this Ferrari of Masaryk again. Down towards Longford corner. And slightly more tidy for Masaryk this time, so Lars Hagman hasn't got the opportunity to get in the draft. 48 minutes to go, Shepherd still leads, gap is up to 5 seconds. With Romain Lebreau now 4.6 seconds behind Julian in second. And Phil Brown 1.2 seconds behind Lebreau in fourth. But this battle continues between Masaryk and Hagman. It is the closest battle on track at the moment. So Masaryk takes a bit of a tighter line coming into there. That might hurt him onto the straight. So down the flying mile they go again. Masaryk has to go defensive straight away. And I think Hagman might be passed before the braking zone. It looks like he is. So Masaryk has got to dip into the draft once again. Not quite got the braking power this time. Lars Hagman, quite a slight bit of oversteer on the exit, but he's ahead again. But this battle isn't over. So through, down to the viaduct they go. Over the crest. Trying to get this car stopped. So through and over the bridge they go. So it looks like no one has really been a victim of the viaduct section, unless we didn't see something on camera. That's unfortunate. Masaryk, I think, got his braking all wrong for the Longford corner. I don't know if he actually meant to take a dive up the inside there, but it looked possibly like he was approaching a bit faster than he wanted to, and had to take avoiding action. And thankfully Lars Hagman has kept going, but that has meant that his brother Bjorn Hagman has got past. So now the Hondas are together. I wonder if there's any team orders or brother orders. So as I said before, this car, or in fact this series, this mod, had an update just before, a few days before we went live with this round. The McLaren was added. There is some different body shapes of a Cooper that are set to be added as well. And slight adjustments to engine life and rev limits. So drivers are going to have to be very careful with rev limits. We did see a couple of drivers popping an engine in practice at Bathurst, but I think they've got the technique of these cars down. So Cal Stanley and John Van der Geest still going at it back in 9th and 10th. Now it doesn't matter about points for some of these guys. Cal Stanley's actually coming into the pits, so I wonder if he's underfueled, or he's possibly got a problem. I don't think tyre wear would really be a thing. So Lars Hagman now ahead of his brother into 6th place. And as luck would have it, look who it is. It's Masaryk back on the tail of Lars Hagman after that little incident at this part of the track last time. So back in the drafting battle for now 7th and 8th. So just outside the points. This in fact is not Lars Hagman, this is Bjorn Hagman. So same kind of battle, but different Honda driver. So Masaryk was able to get past. Is he going to get it stopped though? Not quite. He's having trouble getting it stopped for that section. think he's bounced off that barrier a couple of times, so hopefully there's no suspension damage. So, a quarter of the race gone. It's still Shepherd that leads. Lead is now out to 7.3 seconds. So out in front. Not really any possibility of lap cars getting in the way just yet. And we've got our lap record down to 2 minutes, 0.5. So Bjorn Hagman is able to keep in the slipstream of Michael Masaryk as it come down to the final mount for the corner. But it may look like Masaryk does have a little bit of a pace advantage. So fastest lap for Masaryk is a 2:02.3. Bjorn Hagman is a 2:03.2. So possibly we might see Masaryk now pull away. As I think Cal Stanley is still in the pits. Although it doesn't actually say he's in the pits, so I'm wondering whether there's a technical problem we don't know about. But back to the battle between third and fourth. So Ferrari's in second, third and fourth on the road. So that is a Ferrari ahead. That is a blue Ferrari. I believe that's our French driver, Lebro, that's his tribute to Joe Siffert. Oh, and he goes slightly wide on the exit of that turn. That means he's going to be lacking momentum coming up onto the straight. Does Phil Brown have enough momentum down this part of the course? So down towards the final corner they come. So Cal Stanley, unfortunately, is our third retirement. You can see he's parked in the pits for a little bit. I was wondering what... he wasn't actually getting serviced by the pit crew, so I was wondering what the problem was there. Maybe we'll find out for next round. So side by side, Lars Hagman and Kostas Kanzouris this time. So Lars Hagman was able to put some laps in, put some faster laps in, and able to catch Kostas Kanzouris and pass, so back up to 5th place. So Lars Hagman has been a little bit of a yo-yo this round. Up and down the order. Kostas Kanzouris has something to say about it. Over that crest, you do not want to. Go over that crest with any sort of lock or having your car out of shape. So Kostas Kanzouris down to the Longford corner again. Masaryk is now being dropped a little at the back there. But back to the battle between third and fourth. It's now tightening up. So through this tight section here, the track does narrow through this bridge. And then you have to get this braking absolutely perfect here. Cutting as close as you can to the inside fence. And looks like Lebro has possibly done it again. Onto the straight. That seems to be a bit of a bogey corner. So this time Phil Brown is much closer than he was. So Lebro is going defensive very, very early. I think the Ferrari of Phil Brown is going to be passed before the braking zone. He's just going to get this absolutely spot on. So braking hard down to the last corner. You can see the cars struggling as they wiggle on the brakes. Phil Brown has got it slightly wide on exit. So all that hard work undone by braking just a bit late at the end of the straight. He's got to do it all again. So down to the viaduct again, braking hard. just skimming that inside wall, it looks like. That viaduct is perilously close. Slight lock of the inside wheel. Oh, that sounded like a missed gear from Lebro there. Didn't quite get it going through second and third. We did have a yellow flag for ninth, which is Don van der Geest. Fortunately coming to grief at the viaduct, but he gets going again. So that was a bit lucky for Lebro there. You could hear that he was bouncing off the limiter. I wonder if he actually skipped gears. He just seemed to go nowhere, changing from about second to third. So slightly further back this time. I don't know if this is going to be close enough to get into the slipstream and pass by the end of the straight. But Lebro doesn't think about going defensive this time. Brown is half a second away, coming up to the braking zone. I wonder if he can possibly pull out to put off the other car into the braking zone. Not quite close enough. A bit neat and tidy off the grass this time. No particular worries with oversteer onto that dirt, which has got a little bit worn away because of these drivers using it on the exit. I don't think that's by design, that's probably just by accident. It's very difficult to get these cars stopped. And down into that very sharp turn right at the end of the fastest part of the circuit. Into the viaduct for the next time. So 37 minutes to go. It's still Shepherd that leads. As we see, Phil Brown just cutting the corners as much as possible, throwing up the dirt. Julian Paws is in second by 10 seconds. Now this battle for third and fourth, just a second between them. It looked like Phil Brown had a harder job getting it the car going onto the straight. This is the closest battle on the track at the moment. Think about maybe championship connotations as well. Phil Brown possibly wants to have all the points he can get, because he didn't score last time out, remember. He was one of our unfortunate early retirees. I remember seeing his car was stricken over an Armco barrier with his rear wheels in the air, and that was it. He was into retirement. So points down to 6th place. So as it currently stands, 3rd place will be 4 points. 4th place will be 3 points. So good points on offer. Got to make the most of it, because I mean there's not a lot of points. And it's only a 6-race season, and the added fact that these drivers have to take a different car every single round. Slight oversteer from the road coming out the final corner puts it right in the centre of the track. So that's a good tactic, because it is a bit tight down here when you're on the crest of the road. So you'd have to be a brave man to pass down into this section, I think. So slightly tighter line for Phil Brown coming through the viaduct. Looks like a slight oversteer moment for Lebro coming through that section. But keeps it pointing in the right direction. So also looking down our list as well, Romain Lebro was unfortunately in that dreaded 7th position in round 1, so he missed out on a point. So again, both these drivers want to make up for it in this round, at least grab some points. Now we did see last time past half distance. Again, we're not expecting any pit stops. The fuel should be able to go to the end, and definitely the tyres. But we saw that maybe fatigue or concentration was coming in late on in this race. in round 1. We saw a couple of mistakes late on. Slight bit of oversteer, maybe grabbing a bit of the grass. So this round, no Coopers have decided to venture onto the field. So it's an Eagle out front with Shepherd, and then it's a Ferrari in 2nd, 3rd and 4th. Honda 5th rather. Ferrari in 6th. And then the only McLaren in the field in 7th. Then it's Honda and Brabham. So I thought possibly Phil Brown was coming into the pits there. That seemed a very, very slow exit. I don't know whether he possibly did Phil Brown miss a gear, or perhaps thinking of other things coming out that final corner. I know that sometimes drivers like to cut it a bit fine with fuel and then have the problem of fuel saving for the rest of the race. It's something I never really like to do myself. That's 9th place, obviously 9th place on the... That's a very awkward place to stop or spin around. A very awkward 3-point turn in the middle of one of the narrowest places on the course. The leader is just behind. The leader has actually gone off. So whilst I was watching that, Maddie Shepherd came down into that braking zone and went into the field, but luckily got away with that. I was going to say, would Philip Pitchler be able to get away in time for Maddie Shepherd to come upon him that was stricken across the bridge, but she had her own little accident. In sympathy, I guess. She wouldn't have been able to see the yellow flag further up the road. So out in front, very rare that we actually see Maddie Shepherd, because she was out front. Now the lead, what was 11 seconds, has come down to 3.2 seconds. So you can see that car in the background. That is the Ferrari of Julian Paws. So looking at lap times, best lap time for Julian Paws was a 2:07. Maddie Shepherd's been able to put in a 2:02. Fastest lap of the race so far. So probably able to pull out a little bit of a gap, maybe just pushing on a bit too much. Don't want to get too close to that tree stump there, because that could mean it's all over. So you got to keep concentrating all the way to the end. We are 1 minute away from half distance. So back to the battle between 5th and 6th place. So Lars Hagman is still being harried by Michael Masaryk. Grabbing a slight bit of dirt coming through this King's Bridge section. So Phil Brown now back on the back of Romain Lebreau. So they've swapped places a couple of times. I think mainly the places that they've passed have been the end of the Tannery Straight and the end of the Flying Mile. This is the Tannery corner. I think you could possibly put in a good defence through the twistier parts of this circuit. I haven't seen really anybody go side by side, and quite rightly, Phil Brown straight lines that part of the course. There's the cars behind, and Masaryk does exactly the same, so that seems to be a faster line through there. Maybe a little bit risky by hitting the dirt, but that's definitely a faster line. So come down the Flying Mile. Doesn't look like Phil Brown got a good enough exit to be able to pass down into the last corner. So a slight wiggle from the car in front, but no particular problems. Now, as I say about fastest lap times, Julian Paws possibly with the target of seeing Maddie Shepherd ahead, has been able to put the fastest lap of the race in, 2:01. So beaten Maddie Shepherd by about 1/10 of a second. So could there possibly be a challenge for the lead? Possibly puts Maddie Shepherd under a bit of pressure that she didn't have at the first part of the race. So she was able to pull out that gap at the start of the race while everyone was battling behind. But third and fourth are absolutely locked together. And in fact fifth and sixth as well. So Phil Brown right under the rear exhaust pipe. So pretty much identical cars between these two. It's only possibly gearing that's going to make a difference, and driver ability, of course. So two Ferraris doing battle, one blue, one red. So Phil Brown was able to get across Romain Lebreau and then brake. Slightly wide of the entry of the corner, but seems to be alright. So now the shoes on the other foot. Phil Brown is now out in third. Now Lebreau has to give chase. Back to the battle between fifth and sixth as we head to the braking zone. Honda and that Ferrari are really well matched. I think Lars Hagman is possibly trying to break the toe there. Lebreau and Brown, I just saw on the tower, have swapped places yet again. So that down into the final corner, they've yet again, they are locked together. Who's going to break? I think Lebreau is possibly giving best. So Phil Brown probably got a better exit out of the final turn. And was able to get back past, but you'd have to be a brave driver or two brave drivers to go side by side through that first section, because you're going over a couple of crests, and the chances that the car would get a little bit squirrely, and you don't want anyone beside you when that happens. So down the Tannery Straight. Over the level crossing. Drivers will have to be very careful. I don't think it's enough of a crest there for the red line to peak. But drivers are going to have to be very careful. So third and fourth battling ahead again. Phil Brown stayed in front. Masaryk. This seems to be. I was going to say he didn't look like he was going to get it stopped there, but he did. He looks like he was coming in way too fast, but he managed to get it stopped. Lars Hagman banging off the fence. Oh! And unfortunately grabs a bit more fence. Is he going to be able to get it going again? Unfortunately he's got to wait for... That is Pichler, I believe, avoiding action. So looking at the tower. 10th place. Pichler has not been able to get going. Does that mean that... In fact he has. So I think possibly Pichler saw the yellow flag ahead. Maybe was already out of shape by the time he got to the accident, but had an accident of his own. Did a very beautiful spin over the bank. I was going to say the banking, the ditch rather. Already a lap down. But Lars Hagman now has significant damage to that Honda. Now I did see last time out, I believe it was actually Masaryk. In fact no, it was Hagman, Bjorn Hagman and Lebreau that had front end damage to their Ferraris at Bathurst in round 1. Didn't seem to affect them too much. And it just looked like that was the problem for Lars Hagman. Just took the front end off. But that's now dropped him out the points. And Kanzuras goes back up to 6th place. Right, drafting battle resumed. So 4th place. Side by side. So Phil Brown and Lebreau down to... Can they go side by side? Phil Brown was Looked like he was scared off a little. Maybe didn't think that Lebro was going to give him room, but Lebro pulled off that corner very, very tight indeed. Sometimes a bit scary when you go into a corner side by side, and you're wondering if you want to be able to turn in to get to the corner exit, and you're worried that the driver beside you, are they going to give you room or not? It's a good skill to learn if you're new to sim racing, to learn to go side by side through some of the corners, choosing differing lines. Not always just picking the racing line as the optimal line. Try different lines. So a little bit of a yellow flag at Newbury Corner. It's unfortunately Lars Hagman. So maybe handling issues now for Lars Hagman. Coming over that crest, looked like Phil Brown was a little bit out of shape, but managed to scoop it up. So back down to the Longford corner. Slight wiggle on the brakes for Lebro. I can see a car in the background. It's possibly moving in. So Masaryk is only 3-4 seconds off this battle. But this is the closest battle on track at the moment, between third and fourth. Only 22 minutes to go in this race, so mistakes may be creeping in for a couple of the drivers. But this battle has been going on since, I'd say, the first 2 minutes of this race. Once it all settled out, or settled down, and drivers got a little bit of space, these two have been absolutely locked together. So I normally do this at the start of the race, but it might be worth doing it now. Let's check out who our biggest winners and losers of this first 3 quarters of the race were. So Julian Paul was up 4 places apparently from where he was on the grid. Kostas Kanzouras, Bjorn Hagman and Philip Pichler up 2 places, and John van der Geest moves up 1. Looks like Lars Hagman is coming into the pits. I wonder if this is possibly for repair or possibly for retirement. He may not have been scoring any points, but anything can happen in the last 20 minutes of this race. So 8th place, that is who is that? That's John van der Geest that's come to grief. Unfortunately, he's going to have to watch out for the cars that are coming down the road. That is 3rd and 4th. And this will be 5th, as Masaryk possibly getting a little bit scared by that yellow flag as John van der Geest reappears. So trying to stay out of the way as best he could, but very narrow roads here. He parked it on one side of the course, probably the narrowest part of the track, and there's no way through for either of the drivers, say Bjorn Hagman, or in fact Lars Hagman. So I wonder what Lars Hagman was in the pits for a minuscule amount of time. So I wonder what that was for. In fact, this is actually for position. My bad. So John van der Geest was in 7th place, or 6th place, I think. No, 7th place. And he's in amongst these 2 drivers for position now. So Lars Hagman behind. In fact, he was lapped by the car in front, who I think is Michael Masaryk. Indeed it is. That is 5th place Michael Masaryk. So Lars Hagman and John van der Geest are doing battle on track. We have a 7th place, I think, has come to grief at the end of the straight, but I want to stick with this battle for 3rd and 4th. Phil Brown again overtaking in the draft, and I would imagine that there's going to be a battle behind as well. But that's another swap of positions. This must be the most. They're swapping positions nearly every other lap. So, Romain Lebreau perhaps thinking about it, maybe putting Phil Brown off into the braking zone. Because this is a vital braking point here. So just showing his nose. And third and fourth are back at it. So on to the Tanu straight for the next time over the level crossing. So it looks like Lebreau got a bit of a better exit there and is already alongside. Now I did say that Julian Paws was possibly going to be closing in on Maddie Shepherd in the lead, but it looks like the gap is now back up to close in the braking zone. I don't know if that was a slight touch there. But they both survived. Oh, and I had to give it the commentator's curse. So Lebreau lights it up. And that is Masaryk not far behind to maybe take advantage. So that was a very quick recovery from Lebreau, who possibly has some handling issues. He looks like he lit up the tyres coming onto the bridge. Unfortunately, there was only solid things to hit, so Lebreau, now for the second race in a row, has a missing front end. And he's possibly got some handling issues as well, struggling to keep that thing in a straight line. So that thing looks like an absolute handful. So there's an eagle just behind. I'm not sure who that is. That's possible. That's not the leader. That's John Van der Geest. I think Lebreau has hit the fence. Indeed he does. I think he's possibly got some suspension damage because that car went left when he meant to go right. So it's down in down in 5th place. With a Honda just behind. I think that Honda's going to lap Lebreau here. You can't be lapping him because a Honda is 7th and 9th. Maybe unlapping himself. So Phil Brown is now in 3rd place after that slight bit of an accident here on the bridge. So maybe there was a slight bump that caught out Lebreau. That made him spin round. So that was a bit unfortunate. That battle was set to go to the end. I was looking forward to its conclusion because they were swapping places every other lap. And it looks like Lebreau has decided to call it a day. And that does mean that no points for Lebreau for this round. He's going to be unlucky another round in a row. So, 4 retirements so far. We have De Silva, Talviti, Stanley, and Lebreau added to that list. So, Lars Hagman, after that slight pit stop, maybe thanking his lucky stars a bit. He's going to be up to 8th place once he passes Lebreau on the where he stopped or where he retired. But as I say, it is first down to 6th place. 4 points. But we've got just under 15 minutes to go. So anything can happen. And it usually does. So through the bridge. And I think possibly Lars wants to be unlapped here. He's possibly got more pace than the car in front. In fact, looking at that car, that is John Van der Geest, so this is for position. So after that pit stop, Lars Hagman, I forgot, is actually back behind John van der Geest. So John van der Geest puts it right in the centre of the road. So Lars is probably gagging to get past this Eagle as his brother Bjorn Hagman carries on in 6th place. Bjorn Hagman must be one of those thanking his lucky stars. He was well down the order, but he's managed to scrape away with a point at the moment. So slightly slower getting out of that corner onto the main straight, unfortunately. Lars Hagman veering off to the... I wonder if he's still suffering from a little bit of suspension damage. Possibly might be an issue. With the steering suddenly moves one way when you're not expecting it. Grab it back under control, but he's managed to be faster through that section. Maybe the Honda is quite fast in a straight line. So sounding like it's bouncing off the limiter there. That didn't sound very nice for whatever engine that was banging off the limiter. But so down to the Longford corner. Oh, John van der Geest braking way too late, and off he goes. Is he unscathed? It looks like he's in one piece. So it looks like there was a bit of runoff down there. But you saw a bit of tyre smoke and he couldn't quite get it slowed down. And off he went. So Lars Hagman now released into 7th place. But he is 100 seconds behind 6th place Bjorn Hagman, his brother. But Matty Shepherd out front, still dominating this race, 7.1 second. So what might have happened, Matty Shepherd having that slight accident. Running a little bit wide at the end of the flying mile. In fact, it wasn't the flying mile, it was the Tannery corner that she didn't get slowed down for. But we're now into qualifying time, so that's the fastest lap of the race from Matty Shepherd, 158.8. So, time's coming down, fuel coming down, so the cars are a little bit lighter. Tyre wear is not really an issue in these cars. So Matty Shepherd, I think, is coming up behind. That's Philip Pichler in the Brabham, who had a torrid start to this race. But he's kept it going. It's all good practice. There's a tough number of courses for this series. Admins have chosen in period or historic tracks, and they're all very difficult in their own way. So for the next round we're going to be heading to France for Clermont-Ferrand, or Charade as it's sometimes called, and that has its an extra challenge. That will be probably a lot of follow my leader, where drivers really got to judge where they want to overtake and where they don't. There's no big long straights at Clermont-Ferrand, so I'm interested to see what's going to happen with that. So Lars Hagman 7th place with 10 minutes to go. So we also got to think about engine life as well, because we have heard a couple of people banging off that limiter. That's 7th place that's gone around. Lars Hagman at the end of Tannery corner, which is allowed, in fact, at 8th place behind him. No, in fact, that was John van der Geest, who's gone around again. So 7th and 8th are 1.3 seconds from each other. I was going to say the director is more concerned about some other things, but this is the closest battle on track now. So John van der Geest now with Lars Hagman, who is making the least mistakes, I think, is the... So it looks like possibly Lars Hagman at the end of Tannery straight, possibly braked a bit late, and now has let John van der Geest through again. You see that McLaren of Costas Kanzaris, he was down the order at the start of this race. It looked like he was dropping like a stone. Couldn't quite get his pace together. But he's managed to survive enough to be in 5th place at the moment. I don't really want to give him a commentator's curse, but so over the bridge up towards Longford corner. So John van der Geest doesn't go straight on this time, keeps it all together over the level crossing. So possibly got 4 laps left in this race. It's a long old race, but it's very indicative of styles of courses back then in the 50s and 60s. Basically just driving down country roads. Kind of reminds me a lot of the old version of Spa, but maybe a little narrower and possibly just as long. If we wanted to do like a classic 1960s championship, we do have Spa available. Zandvoort 1967 is another one, but we have run Zandvoort quite a lot recently in the myriad of other series. So Lars Hagman getting a good run onto the straight. There is room for 2 cars along the straight, side by side. Looks like he was able to pass before the braking zone, but a double dip. And John van der Geest fancies a go on the brakes. Is he going to get it stopped? Slight hitting the tyres on the exit, so kicking himself a little. I think Lars has got to be very careful with that pit entry there. Doesn't want to get a penalty. It was a good effort by John van der Geest coming down and getting him on the brakes, but couldn't quite get it stopped. Oh, this is going to be difficult. Is he going to get it stopped there? He does. I saw the telltale signs of the car struggling to get slowed down, but John van der Geest survives. It was heart in mouth moments. I kind of thought that he was possibly going to be having to take avoiding action, and Lars Hagman is just going to have to hold his breath and hope he doesn't get hit by a car that's spun on the brakes. So just under 6 minutes to go. Shepherd still leads and has done from the absolute start. She managed to get away. It's putting in fastest lap after fastest lap, 158.6. She was able to put in some fast laps at the start whilst everyone was battling behind, going side by side, slowing themselves down. Shepherd was able to pull out a little bit of a lead. Slight mistake part way through the race when she ran wide and the gap came down to about 3 seconds or so. That is 9th place. That's Pichler that's gone around at the viaduct section. I'm seeing the yellow flag, which now cleared. I think Pichler has got going again. I think Pichler would be glad to see the back of this race and glad to see the back of that viaduct section as well. So the gap for the lead did come down to about 3 seconds, but Maddie Shepherd was able to pull out more of a gap, putting the fastest lap time after fastest lap time. Julian Paws possibly had something for her if he was perhaps in the draft, but never quite got close enough. So last step on the podium at the moment is Phil Brown. That early on battle between Phil Brown and Romain Lebreau was swapping nearly every other lap, and I did wonder who was going to come out on top. Unfortunately, Romain Lebreau had a bit of an accident over the bridge. Not this bridge, but the other one. And suffered a little bit of damage, and it looked like it was possibly terminal damage, so he decided to call it a day. He was struggling to keep that car in a straight line. So Masaryk in 4th, and 4 seconds behind Phil Brown. It's been there or thereabouts, but I think Phil Brown and Michael Masaryk are possibly well matched. We'll keep an eye on that battle, but not sure much is going to change. So now Julian Paws has put in lap times in. Best lap time of the race, 1:58.6, so he's found something. But it's he's pushing a bit too late because he's only got just over 3 minutes and about 8 seconds to catch up. So we haven't seen a lot of Julian Paws. Again, I think Julian has possibly got a tribute livery on his Ferrari. Ferraris were blue at a certain point, I seem to remember. I think it was out of protest. I don't know the exact facts about that, but Ferraris have also been yellow at a certain point as well, so maybe I'm remembering my facts wrong. But so John van der Geest going over that crest. And a little bit of a wiggle. Did look very, very sketchy. But Sheva pushing on. So even though she hasn't got the fastest lap of the race, she could possibly lift off by about a second a lap and still be fine. Bjorn Hagman currently in 6th place. And the last championship point in the field. Michael Masaryk was one of those drivers in the action early on as well. I did say there might be a sting in the tail. Phil Brown. Over he goes. Is that absolutely terminal? It is. So what happened to Phil Brown? So that part of the course with the narrow bridge, maybe he did the same as Romain Lebreau. And when we caught him, he was upside down and rolling over. So a bit of a heavy crash for Phil Brown with only just over a minute to go. So I did say I was keeping an eye on that gap between Masaryk and Phil Brown. But unfortunately, Phil Brown has come to grief again, and this time agonisingly 1 minute away from the end of the... So mistakes creeping in for a lot of drivers. Does that Honda not have a front end on it? It does not. So a lot of drivers really having problems late on to the end. Bjorn Hagman now in 5th because of that accident for Phil Brown. That means that Lance Hagman will possibly get the last championship point. He is a lap down though. That is the thing. Will he be able to pass Phil Brown before the checkered flag? Maddie Shepherd coming down the last straight. Only 13 seconds to go, so this is the last lap. So this will be a second win on the bounce for Maddie Shepherd. A dominant drive. Slight scare part way through, but has managed to keep it going. And across the line she goes. She'll be really proud of that. That's a good win. Julian Paws. That's a good second as well. Managed to survive the chaos and comes across the line 2nd place. So Masaryk, again, one of those drivers that maybe got to thank his lucky stars, because he's going to come across the line. Or hopefully come across the line in 3rd place. So a bit of a way to go between second and third in the end. But Masaryk was able to improve from his 5th place last time out to the last step of the podium. So bringing that Ferrari all the way to the finishing line. I think 60 minutes on these tracks are an effort in themselves. So across the line he goes. Costas Kanzouris up to 4th place. He must wonder where that has come from. So donuts for Maddie Shepherd outside the pub and into the hay bales. So I believe the last drivers across the line. Costas Kanzouris has come across the line and we'll get 4th place. 5th place, Bjorn Hagman. Probably thinking where that came from as well. Dragged this Honda. He was normally at the back of some of the packs and he made a mistake late on, but he's managed to bring it to the finish in 5th place. And it does look like Lars Hagman did get past Phil Brown at the end to grab 6th and the last point on the grid. So, wow. I'm absolutely spent after that. I don't know about you. That was some great action from these drivers on a very, very difficult course. A very difficult course indeed. I did wonder what was going to happen at the start, but everyone kept it clean. It was right at the kind of past half distance where things started to go a little bit wrong. But we'll check the official results. So, Maddie Shepherd comes away with the win for the 2nd time in a row. Julian Porsche in 2nd. Michael Masaryk in 3rd. Costas Kanzouris coming home, maybe thinking he's a bit lucky to come home in 4th with all the problems with people behind. Same with Bjorn Hagman in 5th. Now it does say that Phil Brown is in 6th. I'm going to have to wait till the official result for that. He does still get points for it, perhaps. I did see on the tower that it was Lars Hagman, so I'm possibly going to give the points to Lars. So I'm not sure what the stewards think about that. It depends where he passed Phil Brown on the track and when Phil Brown retired. So we'll give Lars Hagman the points for now, but we'll wait for the official result next time. So that means that possibly Phil Brown drops out of the top 6, does not get points this round for the 2nd time in a row. Torrid luck. Absolute torrid luck for Phil Brown. So that means that John van der Geest will get 8th place. I'm having to do this on the fly here with my points. So 8th place for John van der Geest. 9th for Philip Pichler, that's correct. Where's Philip Pichler in the list? He's down here. Fitting in my spreadsheet, that's what I do. Lebro, unfortunately, will get a DNF this round. Great battles early on with Phil Brown, but came to grief on that bridge. That bridge did seem to be a bit of a curse for a lot of the drivers. A couple of drivers coming to grief, but yeah, not good at all. We do have the last of our runners. Unfortunately, Cal Stanley, Tony Talviti, and Gilles de Silva were the last of our cars in the field. So, what have we got in store for the rest of this season? So, coming up for the rest of this season, we have Clermont-Ferrand is our next race next week, in fact. It's a very tight circuit in France, so I would imagine it's actually going to be a home Grand Prix for a lot of these drivers that race with us. And it's the 1965 version. So look forward to that. And then we're heading to the replacement for Brands Hatch, which is Fuji 1968. So that's Fuji with the banking for the first turn. Then Canada in Mosport Park on the 20th of May. Then Watkins Glen in the US for the last round, 27th of May. So if I've done everything correctly, we should have the season standings as they appear. So, Maddie Shepherd with that double win. 18 points, so maximum score for Maddie Shepherd. Kostas Kanzouras now on 9 points, up to second place. Julian Pors, 6 points in third. Marko Masaryk in fourth with 6. So joint third, and fifth place for Lars Hagman with 5 points. Then we have Bjorn Hagman, Jim Cavallo, who wasn't here today, with the unlucky Phil Brown pointless again, with John van der Gees and Philip Pichler rounding out the top 10. So, what a very exciting Grand Prix. I'm a little bit out of breath after that. It was a interesting Grand Prix to watch, interesting Grand Prix to commentate on. So I've been your host, Neil Wood. Thank you for joining us at Sim Racing Online. We will be back next Wednesday for the next round of this championship. So if you like what you see, perhaps give the YouTube channel a follow, and perhaps give it a like as well. But we will see you next time around in Clermont-Ferrand for the French Grand Prix of the Formula 1 1967 season. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.